Today I'm going to be talking about adiabatic cooling and how the two different types of air masses result in changes in weather conditions in various areas. To begin with, there's some useful vocabulary to know. Stable air masses are air masses that are being forced upwards and form clouds. These air masses usually cool at about the same rate as the environment around them. Unstable air masses are pockets of air that naturally rise and form pillar and clouds that are often associated with um, thunderstorms. The lifted condensation level is the altitude in which the rising air begins to form clouds due to the air temperature being the same as the dew point. It's also useful to know the difference between conduction and convection, although we won't be talking about that as much. Conduction is the transfer of heat by contact, and convection is just basically warm air rising. So to talk about stable air cooling, the common interpretation of adiabatic cooling with stable air involves the diagram of a mountain as seen below. The air starts at an altitude usually associated with sea level and is forced up to a different altitude, which is the tip of the mountain. This causes more stable clouds to form with the chance of creating precipitation, but it's not as likely. The clouds associated with the stable air cooling aren't as tall and are more flat and often um, are at about the same altitude. Unstable air, on the other hand, is a little more complicated. In the diagram below, the air starts at 40 degrees Celsius and is being heated by the sun, but as the air rises, it cools at a dry rate, which is 10 degrees Celsius per 1,000 meters. This happens all the way up until the lifted condensation level. Above the lifted condensation level, the air then cools at the wet rate because it is saturated since it is the same temperature as the dew point. It cools at 6 degrees Celsius per 1,000 meters. This will happen all the way up until the air is too cool to continue rising, and these types of clouds are often associated with thunderstorms and rain and have an increased chance of precipitation. The video here embedded in the presentation is an example of stable air rising. It is useful to look at and understand because it is very different and has very different effects on the area around the mountains versus a flat plains area of uh, unstable air. This here is a list of all the references that were used in the presentation.